Welcome back to As It Turned Out, hosted by your favorite CU senior, Pananika Z. Maruna. This is the podcast about the messy, beautiful process of figuring it out as we go. We're not here for perfect paths. We're here for the moments of doubt, the big pivots, and the quiet wins that don't make it onto our LinkedIn. We're talking about what it actually looks like to grow, adapt, and make our own way, one unexpected move at a time. Let's get into it. Today, I'm sitting down with Todd Dutkin, a business leader, entrepreneur, and professor whose career has been shaped by curiosity, growth, and the power of awe. From traveling the world at a young age to building a small food company into an industry leader, Todd's journey is a testament to the power of embracing the unknown. Today, we talk about leadership, entrepreneurship, and the experiences that shaped his career. Because as it turned out, even the most successful careers don't follow a straight line. So let's dive into his journey and see how things actually turn out. When you were growing up, how did you imagine your career would look like, and how different is that from where you ended up?
So I remember in fifth grade, they had the day where, everybody's saying, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I really didn't have a good answer to that question. You had the baseball players, astronauts, and I really didn't have a very good answer to that. In fact, I can't even remember what it was, but I remember being impressed by all the answers of kids, like that they knew what they were going to do. And I was probably the exact opposite. I had no clue. I really didn't have a good idea about what I was going to do. And I think that actually stayed with me my whole life. And instead of being a weakness, I think it became a superpower, because when you don't know what you want to do, it keeps you open to trying many things. So I left home when I was 17. I had just graduated high school. I had turned 17 in March, the end of March, and I graduated at the beginning of June. And I think my parents felt that, hey, you're a little young to go to college. And so they encouraged me before the gap year became a thing to do a gap year. That gap year turned into 2.5 years. I put a backpack on my back, and I spent 2.5 years just traveling the globe. And in that time, I did a whole host of jobs. I picked grapes in a winery.
Wow.
In southern France. I've picked eggs in a kibbutz. I've milked cows. I've picked fruit. I have hatched baby chickens. And so what it taught me is that when you are just open to experience comes at you. There's a lot of things that you eventually find. So I was able to do all these things that were formative at an early stage that allowed me to kind of see a lot of the world and see a lot of different jobs. I thought I was going to go to law school. I worked as a paralegal on Wall Street in New York after I graduated from college, and I hated it. So I decided not to go into the law. I went to International Affairs School in Washington, D.C. And from there, I said, I was actually asked to apply for the diplomatic corps. And I said, I don't want to do a government job. So I just picked up again and went overseas and started looking for a job from there. And that led me to telecommunications in Asia. And I stayed with that for about 10 years before founding my own business.
Wow.
So kind of a circuitous path. And, maybe the takeaway from that is you don't necessarily need to know what you're going to do. Some people know, and that's great. For the folks that are listening or will listen, you don't necessarily need to know to be successful. You just need to know that you have to go out there and really participate every day in life and get the most out of each experience you can.
Yeah, it's about that journey, not the destination.
Yeah, it's about the journey. Exactly.
Yeah. So you'd kind of say that time that you spent abroad early on shaped the kind of person you became when it came to business and leadership. How would you say that a broad experience really shaped how you saw the world, especially so young?
Well, I grew up in a place called Easton, Pennsylvania, which is a small town in the east coast or the eastern edge of Pennsylvania. And when I went overseas, it was really the first time and lived there. It was really the first time I met and lived among people of many different cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what we find is that or we can find dissimilarities in a lot of things in the world. What I found is that most people are the same. We
Yeah.
have the same wants and needs and the same things that are important to us. And when you find that in people and you recognize that if you see it across groups and groups and groups of different people, that there's more similarity, more what's common in us than that's separate, you can apply that to anything you do in life. And so for me, I was applying that to actually business first and then building a business second. And when we start with the fabric that we're all the same and we basically want the same things, it allows us to present ourselves and present ideas and ways we want to grow organizations that would not only work for myself, but would work for other people. And
Yeah.
that's how I built my company.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many different cultural norms of how business works. Just
Oh, totally.
understanding that communication aspect.
Yeah, I think that's really true too. I think that at the end of the day, we're all just people.
Mhm.
And the more people you meet, the more that affirms. And the more travel you do, our cultural norms may be a little different. We may uh, do things a little differently in each country, but for the most part, we are pretty much the same. We want
Yeah,
to all do meaningful work, have a good life, make a difference for the most part, most of us. And
yeah,
so we can tap into that a lot into whatever we do with our lives.
that's beautiful. Definitely. We're all just humans.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. Okay, so can you tell me a little bit about that company you started? Kind of what that looked like, what got you inspired?
Well, I was in telecommunications in a large public company for many years. I was in a company that was it was a Fortune 100 company. I had a very senior position there. And my job for the last 18 months before I left was laying people off
Mm.
because organizations grow. And then this was a time where they were shrinking. And my job, because I ran the division, was to downsize it. And I did that for a period of time. And then I finally said to myself, life is too short. I really don't enjoy doing this. And I decided to strike out on my own. I had been involved in um, corporate development, which is sourcing and looking at different opportunities for acquisitions and mergers and growth of business. So I felt like I knew how to find a business. So I took 6 months and I found a small food manufacturing business, something that I could afford. And I bought the business and it was tiny. It was less than $1 million of revenue when I took it over. And we sold it last year.
Oh,
And we sold it to a large Spanish company. And now we're one of the largest food manufacturers in the world, which, yeah, it's kind of cool. Good
yeah.
journey.
That's awesome. So yeah, like what was it kind of about that company that stood out to you besides the fact that it was something that you could afford? I know that so many people are interested in starting companies or being entrepreneurs and it can just seem so daunting. So how did you see Fresca and be like, that's something I want to be a part of?
You know, you hit the nail on the head. Entrepreneurship can seem daunting.
Yeah.
But you know, the one thing I guess, if anybody was to start on entrepreneurship, what I would tell them is there's never going to be a perfect opportunity.
Hmm.
Like even the best opportunity has challenges with it. There's problems and things go wrong and stuff is not absolute. It's really about the confidence in yourself and your ability to think that you can make a difference in what that organization is today or the idea that you want to build, what you can build to build that out into something that is meaningful. What I saw in Fresca Foods, which was my company, was that it had all the foundations. It had, at that stage, built all the things that are necessary for growth. It had an operations, it had a sales force, all of are very small. Operations, sales force, finance department, and so all the framework for product development, all the framework was there in which you could actually start to gain momentum and build it out. Boulder at the time, which is where I'm centered, it was going through a transformation and becoming kind of the epicenter of the natural foods industry.
Hmm.
And we were very fortunate at the time because you had a lot of entrepreneurs with a lot of really good ideas. but they didn't have any manufacturing base within Boulder. And because I didn't come from manufacturing, what I was able to do is I was able to uh, not say no to a lot of entrepreneurs that were looking for services. And because I didn't know what manufacturing entailed, we were like, oh, we could do that. We could do that. We could do that. And that led us to become kind of the go-to provider in the natural foods industry. And that's how we built our reputation.
Yeah, that kind of say yes mindset.
I, I, uh, I said say yes, and then eventually it told me to say yes, but.
Oh,
So
right.
never say no, but maybe you had to, eventually we had to say yes, but like we can do this, but
Mhm.
there's a cost or there's a challenge or something like that. But yeah, that entrepreneurship is all about saying yes,
Yeah,
because, when you're starting off, you are small. Your idea is what governs where you're going. You do have to say no occasionally, but most of it's about figuring out a way to say yes. That's a good observation.
yeah, that's great. And I feel like that's a great lesson just for life.
100%, right? That's what is the growth mindset.
Hmm.
There's I think she's a Stanford psychologist, Carol Dweck, I think is her name. It's called The Mindset. It's a really good book. And she talks about that whole, learning to say yes and learning to actually figure out a way to extend yourself and put yourself out there. And that is a good lesson for life, not just business, right?
Hmm.
We
Often.
learn a lot more when we put ourselves out in uncomfortable situations.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you probably learned a lot of that through all of that travel so early on.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think I've kept that desire to want to continue to travel. The thing I left home, I did a walkabout for about 2.5 years. And then after I graduated, graduate school, um, I did my MIA, my Master's of International Affairs. And instead of looking for a job in the US, I immediately went overseas
Yeah.
and I lived in Hong Kong for 9.5 years.
Wow. That's
And
long.
so, yeah, that desire to actually go out and see the world has never left. And I love that, man.
And kind of just experience such a different culture.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay, kind of to bring it back to Fresca. As Fresca started to grow so fast, what were some of the biggest turning points that shaped both the company and your career?
So, when Fresca grew, we were growing at a rate of about 35% a year, every year for 15, 20 years.
Oh my goodness.
And if you think about that, every 3 years, you're doubling.
Hmm.
Now, we started with a very low base, right? But you're still doubling every 3 years. The one thing I guess I found is that the people that like certain stages of organizations don't like other stages. So
Mm.
some people want to say, oh, I like it when it's small. I like it when I have an impact like this. And so we found that it was some people would naturally migrate out, where others stayed with us the whole time. And then the second thing that I think was really important was it was structural. If you're doubling every 3 years, the infrastructure that you have in place, whether it's the accounting infrastructure, the logistics infrastructure, because it's manufacturing, the platforms, they all become obsolete very quickly.
Yeah.
And so the challenge was to make sure that we were building in enough capacity, not only human capacity, people, and people that can grow with the organization, but actually physical capacity into the business, so that if every 3 years you're doubling your space needs, your processing needs, whether it's the softwares or the different types of development programs you're using, they all need to scale in a way that is really challenging. There's a book, I think it's called Who Hid My Cheese? It's a management book, and it's about change. And we used to bring that management book into our offsites because change, stress under those environments can be quite dramatic. And some people react really well to it. They love the change. They're never bored. And some people like to say, this is my job and I don't want anything to infringe upon it. And
Yeah.
so you had to balance the need for both types of people in an organization at a rate where you're scaling every 3 years, whatever you've built has become obsolete. So I think that was the biggest challenge that we faced. And the business still continues to grow at that rate today. So yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah. And that must have just been so crazy for you too, having so much change constantly and having to evolve every year with
Yeah,
that.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's a challenge that you want to face, that's the challenge you want to face. It's better than where I was before, where it was shrinking.
Mm.
When something grows, there's always something new. There's always something exciting. There's always something to reach for or design new. And so every day for me, like there's never a boring day. There's never a day you came in and said, okay, there's not something that needs to be solved. There's not something that needs to be addressed. There's not something exciting that's happening. And I'm not saying that it's all good, that 100%, but those type of challenges are the ones that I really enjoyed. And my day never got boring because one part I'd be talking to customers, one part I'd be talking to finance, one part I'd be talking to operations. And you always had something interesting that was going on. So yeah, I loved it. I really did. I loved it for the whole time I was there. I think what happens with organizations as they grow is that they require more and more cash to be successful. And we were a product of our own growth where our cash needs finally outstripped what our ability to grow was. The market was growing much quicker than we could actually grow with our cash rate. And that's what really kind of triggered us to bring in a partner, which we did last year.
Yeah. That's so inspiring to me. That's really sounds like the dream. Just being able to have such new problems every day and be so engaged in what you do.
It's not for everybody. Some people do like to have like a set schedule.
Mhm.
My schedule was never set.
Yeah.
And just depended on what was happening that day. I mean, certain things were, but for the most part, you had to be very, very, very flexible. I,
Yeah.
I really loved that. I enjoyed it immensely. And in many ways, after you sell a business, I miss that, although new challenges to be had, right?
Yeah. And yeah, kind of over those years, how did your leadership style evolve with that? So what did you kind of learn about leading those people through that change and just through so much growth?
I don't know. Boy, that's a question to probably ask my team. I think when you start something as small, there's a desire to be controlling
Mm.
because it is small and there's really not like I think when I first bought the company, it was 15 people. And I think today we're about 550 people. And
Wow.
so if 15 people, you know everybody, you're touching everything, you're talking to whether it's a production worker or a driver or the person doing the accounting, you know everybody and you know them intimately. Um, when it's 550 people, you have to develop leadership styles and systems and approaches. And I think that the change there for me was about, I really like being in touch with everybody. I
Mm.
liked walking the floor. I liked having the connection to people. And as you grow, you no longer have that direct connection. So you have to manufacture it into the systems and the processes that you create to build organizations. And even though that's fun and interesting, it's not as interesting as actually seeing somebody that we grew up with, spent 20 years with the company, and have their daughter come join us, not as a line worker, but in our engineering department.
Yeah.
It's really cool to see that. And so your leadership changes because the organization changes and requires you to perform in a different way.
Mm.
It doesn't mean that you don't miss some of the things that you did in the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, that's that evolution that you've been talking about.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. 100%.
Yeah. And I kind of just think within building company with so much growth, there's so much trust and curiosity throughout that. How would you say creating that culture where people felt safe to share their ideas really shaped the way that you grew as a leader yourself? And what kind of things did you build through having to do that?
So you hit on something that was fascinating with me when I was running and building this business. Um, Ideas and curiosity became the mainstay. We were primarily a product development company. We take ideas that entrepreneurs have in the food space, and we would make them into um, sellable products.
Hmm.
So one that we studied this year, Justin's Nut Butter, was a customer. And if you look in the natural food space, many of the products that you see on the shelf today are produced right here in Boulder, Colorado,
Yeah.
or Boulder County, Colorado. Ideas became the core of not only our people that we'd work with and fascination with them, but those ideas translate into how do you build organizations that motivate people and make them want to stay. And primarily what we did is we built a very flat organization.
Hmm.
So there was not a lot of hierarchy even today, not a lot of hierarchy in the company. And our ability to remain very, very, very flat allowed a lot of voices to be heard. And good organizations have to take into account what their people want. It sounds silly, but you can't mandate what people want and tell them that that's what they like. You
Hmm.
really have to listen and understand what people are really looking for when you can incorporate that into what you're doing, when you can really bring in the feedback that the organization's giving you. You have a greater opportunity to build aligned systems that are effective, that allow people to prosper. And so I think that was kind of the secret sauce for us the whole time, is that we were very good at listening to people because we were part of them. That's where we came from. And listening to those voices helped us to shape a lot of the systems and the programs that we developed, whether it was for how we're going to remunerate people, how we're going to give them long-term benefits, how we're going to promote them, how we're going to train them. All of them really came from the teams and listening to them with what they wanted.
Yeah. Having that want to have a connection with every single person in your
Yeah,
company.
exactly. Even if you can't, the desire to do it is there.
That's key. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And would you say that kind of built the culture of the company?
You know, the culture of the company builds through your initiative, what you bring, but it's through yes, everybody else in the company contributing. There were days where I would sit back and I would have my own initiative and think, okay, hey, this is what we're going to do. And it would be played back to me that that's wrong. And people would start to say, no, this is how we should do it. Maybe in the early days when you're controlling, you realize like, no, I want to do it this way. At a later stage, what you realize is that the organization is much bigger than one person.
Hmm.
And that if you're going to really succeed, you have to take that into account. And that's exactly what we did. We basically built an organization that the sum of the part, or the whole was greater than the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
So everybody contributed, but that whole was much greater than what any individual could contribute.
It's a team.
It's a team, exactly.
Yeah, I love that. At this point, you have stepped into a chairman role, is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah. What kind of inspired that step into the chairman role and then to pursue doctorate and eventually become a professor at CU?
So my journey was always, as we built the company, you always saw you want to have it grow, and we did a really good job of that. At a certain stage, I remember actually one meeting I was in and two people that worked for me, um, I said, oh my gosh, they could do my job.
Hmm.
And there's a management thesis or idea that you should always be training somebody to take your role.
Hmm.
Well, what I realized is like I was the owner of the business and the CEO of the company. And so what is my next role? And so what I said to myself is that if I was being honest and these people need to be moved up, then I need to think of a way to move myself out.
Hmm.
And at first, that's a little strange, right? It's your company and you're the CEO. But what I thought was that if I do this, then I can do other things. And
Hmm.
when you talked about ideas and curiosity, I was really inspired by all that I learned and the entrepreneurs that I worked with. And I decided, hey, that's something I'd really like to study.
Hmm.
And so I had always wanted to pursue higher education. And I had my master's degree, but in 2020, I went back and got my PhD. And
Hmm.
I took what I learned at Fresco, the whole concept of that ideas build things. And I studied that. And that led me to study curiosity, and it led me to study awe and our sense of wonder, our sense of amazement. And that's what I did my dissertation on, because I found that those elements of curiosity and awe for entrepreneurs was something common to all of them.
Yeah.
So that was how my journey kind of progressed from owning your business to being chairman. And now I work 15 hours a week on the business, and I use the rest of the time to either teach or work on my own research or my own ideas, which I
Yeah.
also find really cool. And that, I think, will be what accompanies me into the next chapter of my life.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can see your love for awe even from the beginning with your travel, with being so inspired to try new things and take on risks and opportunities and ideas.
Yeah, for sure. That's a nice compliment. So thank you.
Definitely. Um, now that you've experienced business, research, and teaching, how do you think your definition of success has changed?
It's interesting. If I'm being honest, when I sold my business, it changed me in the sense that I now can label myself as a successful entrepreneur.
Hmm.
And it's not that the sale of the business, when you're building a business, you are building it because that's your job, that's what you do. I never thought about selling the business, but I had always through the years seen all these people exit and sell their businesses. And I always wondered what that would be like. And when I sold it, it had a real impact on me because one, I have a relationship with the business, but it's no longer mine. And
Yeah.
that's kind of strange and hard to get used to. But then the second was that I had external validation
Hmm.
we sold it to a private equity group and sold it to the largest food manufacturer in Spain and one of the largest in Europe. And that it created that kind of value, that there was interest in the company, told me that the things that we do, the principles we applied, were successful. And that made me feel like not just myself, but everybody participated in that. It's a really cool feeling. I mean, it was really awesome. And so how did that change my idea of success? I think that it allowed me to reflect that sometimes when we're in the heat of making it, when we're in the heat of building our careers, we don't have enough time to reflect on all the achievements that we have. And maybe we need to pick our heads up every once in a while and pat ourselves on the back for all we've done. And so success doesn't come just in one day, even though a sale event triggers it. Success is earned through how you participate in life, through all the years that you're working or living or being with others. And sometimes you need to just reflect on that to understand it and feel comfortable looking at yourself and seeing what you've done well and where you can continue to improve. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's kind of what it triggered in me.
Yeah, I really love that. That's been a big thing for me this year too. Just being proud of where you're at while still being excited for what's coming next is kind of, I think, hard, especially in today's society. It's really easy to be, you're either goal oriented or you're lazy, but you're not. You can't be
Right.
happy with where you're at and still excited about where you're going.
Modern society always has a distraction. There's
Mm.
always something that distracts us. And so establishing presence, establishing being where your feet are, can sometimes be really hard. But I
Yeah.
think what you said is very true. Sometimes we just take stock in where we're at and having presence in the moment. And we realize that, all of us, there's very few human beings that can't look back and see things that they've positively done in their lives.
Yeah. And kind of just looking back I know that you're a professor, so you spend every day teaching students, but what's something that you really wish that you could just ingrain into all of us that you would tell people about what it looks like for it to be successful, what it looks like to build a company, and what we should be thinking about as we enter into the real world and get real person jobs?
I think you guys are entering a marketplace that is going to be fundamentally different than when I did.
Mhm.
And that's just not a function of time. It's a function of technology. I think you guys face one of the biggest challenges that we've ever faced, which is the development of AI. And
Mm.
we're all facing that. And I'm sure you guys see it as you go through even in the years that you've been a CEO, you see how AI starts to infiltrate all we do. I think that one of the things I would encourage students, anybody, is master how AI works.
Mm.
Use it as a tool so that you feel confident, not just taking output that AI gives you and then spitting it back, but really understanding your own way of thinking, your own ideas, and then seeing that these thinking machines, these tools, are a way to extend your ideas further than you could do by yourself. And so if you can use it as a companion, a way to make your thinking grow, you're going to make yourself not only better personally, but more valuable in the marketplace. And so
Yeah.
I think that's the one thing I would recommend. Sometimes the university is like, hey, there'll be new jobs and there'll be new this and there'll be new that. I think the reality is some jobs are going to go away, and a lot of them affect entry level kids coming out of school. And so your ability to be able to master those tools while you're in school will make you a much more valuable person in the workplace as you get out. And I see a lot of that. Lead school is awesome, right?
Yeah.
It's highly regarded. It's got a great student body, and people are actively engaged in using the tools. I think there is a tendency at times, because we all get busy, is to rely on the tool to do some of the work,
Mm.
as opposed to rely on our thinking to direct the tool to do the work. And that's where I think we always have to stay. It always has to come from here. Use the tool, use the tool to create something that's better than what we could do individually, but be the one that's authoring everything that's coming out. And that's the most important lesson.
Yeah.
If you can learn how to use them, especially in this environment, you'll become a much more attractive and valuable person to whatever you decide to do, whatever environment you decide to go into.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think it's crazy. I mean, every industry, including education, is going to have to evolve with it. And it is
So
such a time of big change and it can be scary, but I try to relabel it as exciting.
it's it's scary because it's going to change the nature of the jobs that started, but it's the biggest opportunity humanity's ever had.
Yeah.
And so, if we look at it with the possibilities that will unlock, um, it's amazing. But it now becomes more important for each person to take on the challenge of learning and being front and center in their own learning to be effective in this environment.
Definitely. And if there's something that you would say your students have taught you in the last couple of years, what do you think you really gained from teaching and especially in this era of so much new technology?
What I found, and I'll relay it specifically to leads, it's an extremely bright, talented group of people. I
Hmm.
mean, extremely bright and talented. And especially what I found at Leeds is that the entrepreneurial spirit, what it's unlocking, that I can't tell you how many times I was approached when people found out that I was an entrepreneur and built my business. How many people approached me to say, hey, I have an idea.
Hmm.
Hey, would you listen to this idea? I think that the lead school is in a very unique position in that it has a leadership position in entrepreneurship. I mean, not just with its entrepreneurship center, but with its student body. It attracts a group of people that are highly curious, people that have a lot of interest in creating things, innovating things. And I think that you're in a cauldron that feeds on it. And when you're in a cauldron that one person's doing this and one person's doing this, and you're connected with that large group of people, it creates an environment that is very unique and is something that at least told me that what I learned from the students at least told me is that there's it's not hope is not the right word, but what we see is that the leadership of the future is already germinating the ideas that will lead us into the next generation. And I found that across the board with my time at school.
Yeah. I've made some of my best friends in the world at Leeds, so
I
it's
am
been,
sure. And
yeah.
for life,
Yeah.
you'll find that your college friends, at least in my example, your college friends are where all your wonder and amazement from life is going to come from because they inspire you to do wonderful and amazing things.
Yeah, they push you. They're like a family.
And you're going through experiences that are once in a lifetime experiences with them, right?
Yeah. I guess just kind of to wrap this all up, this is the question I like to ask at the end of my podcasts to just round everything out. So if an early career version of yourself could see where you ended up today, what do you think he would think or it would surprise him most about how it all actually turns out?
I think that maybe the surprise would be that there's not as much surprise there.
Hmm.
And throughout my whole career, I've been interested in exploring just about anything. And when you have that sense of amazement, wonder of the world, um, I'm pleased that I kept that the whole time.
Yeah.
That I think that's what's carried me the furthest, that you never get bored with life, that
Hmm.
there's always something to excite us. And even at this stage where I've stopped working is full time and I'm managing kind of the organization overall, it allows me now to apply that wonder to everything else I do in life. And so surprise is maybe that continued as a thread throughout my entire life, which is cool. If that's my superpower, then I'm glad that's the one I landed with.
Definitely. You've been able to make so much purpose for so many people, not only yourself.
Yeah, if we take away something in life, is that we are never here just for ourselves. We are here for everybody else. We are all interconnected. And the more that we realize that, maybe the more humble we get as we go through life, that we need others. No matter what we do, we need others, and you can't do it yourself. And when we learn that lesson early and can apply it, life seems to be just a little bit more mellow.
Well, thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, this was a thrill.
Thank you so much for tuning in to As It Turned Out. If this episode inspired you or made you feel differently about your own path, share it with someone who'd love it too. And if you know anyone with a story worth telling, someone who took the long way, changed directions, or built a life they never expected, send them my way. Until next time, thanks for being here.